Hello friends, welcome to the Pages and Pearls YouTube channel. Welcome to episode 8 of my knitting podcast. Welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, it's always great to see you here, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Hannah. I am a knitter, neuroscientist, writer based in New York City. And here in this podcast, I mostly talk about my knitting and some other crafts, writing, things like that. But today, just a classic podcast episode, although it is a slightly special episode because it's going to be my last New York episode, which kind of, it makes me quite sad to say that. I've been quite emotional all this past week in anticipation of my upcoming move. Today is Wednesday, the 27th of September, and I am moving out away from New York on the 29th, so just 2 days from now, and I will be moving to the UK to start a new job there. And while I'm very excited about everything that is ahead, also very nervous with all the changes that are upcoming, I'm also really sad about leaving New York behind. I really enjoyed my time here, and I'm also really sad to say goodbye to everyone. But maybe I can talk a little bit more about that later, because you're probably here mostly for the knitting, and maybe we should just talk about that. And then I can, blabber on about other things afterwards. So I'll talk about a few finished objects, go into works in progress, a few acquisitions, and then at the end I'll give you some recommendations as well. In terms of media, other podcasters, whatever I feel like recommending, so stay tuned for that. But starting with my finished objects, I'm wearing the first of those. This is the Uptown Tee by Tori Yu, who is Tori Knits NYC on Instagram. She's a New York-based designer, and my goal was to knit and finish this t-shirt before leaving New York, so I could actually wear it as I'm walking around Uptown, which is the area where I live. And this is a beautiful pattern that has, as you can see, these lace details on the shoulders, and for the rest it's just a raglan t-shirt. Now, I knit this in a size 3. As always, all the details that I'm talking about or most of the details anyways, will be in my Ravelry page, which is linked in the description box below. And I knit this in a size 3, and I made this, I think the only modification really that I made was to make this a bit longer, because I found that the t-shirt length in the pattern was a little too cropped for my liking. It would have worked with some very high-waisted skirts that sit on my waist, but with most pants that I have, it was a bit too cropped, so I added I think about 2 inches or a bit more than 2 inches, which made me use up basically all the yarn, to the last gram that I had. I bought 200 grams of fingering weight, a heavy fingering weight yarn, and I used all 200 grams of that. I even had to go into my gauge swatch and unravel that to finish off the I-cord. So it was a game of yarn chicken. I wasn't that nervous though, because I actually only noticed in the middle of the I-cord that I was playing yarn chicken, and then I still knew I had the gauge swatch, so that was okay. The yarn that I used for this is Noro Sonata, which is a cotton viscose silk and nylon blend, and it's a slightly heavier fingering weight yarn and a beautiful yarn. It's very, very soft, very nice to work with. I've only knit with one cotton yarn before, but that one I found a little bit too dry on the hands while working with it, whereas this one has still a different texture and feel to it, obviously, than wool, but it was much more pleasant, I think, probably because of the blend with the silk and everything. So I would recommend this. This is the color Catmint, which is this very, very cool icy lavender. I just love it. You also can see, I'm gonna get up to show you this. It's also, by the way, it's a bit wrinkly because I kind of pre-packed all of my luggage last weekend already, and have only been taking things out of my suitcases that I need in a given moment. So this one has been rolled up in my suitcase a bit, so any kind of weird wrinkles in it are entirely my own fault due to the way it was stored and have nothing to do with the pattern. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to show you how the color variation of this yarn looks like. So you can see there are a few more saturated parts in here, paler desaturated parts, and there are also there's a bit of variation in terms of thick and thin yarn. So here you can see that it sometimes gets a bit thicker. I don't mind this so much, but if you want to have a really, really regular strand, let's say, then maybe this yarn is not the best idea for you. I used helical knitting, not for the whole garment, but for big parts of it. So you do have, because it is a raglan construction, you do end up knitting for quite a while until you split for sleeves, and I wanted to avoid only introducing the new yarn after I'd finished the yoke, so I already started a bit before, but once with the helical knitting, I'd made my way back to the armhole and would have had to slip stitches into the lace pattern. That's when I kind of cut the second ball of yarn, wove in the end, and then started again once I had split for sleeves and it was just stuck in it in the round, because then the helical knitting obviously is much easier. And I think that was a good idea. I'd seen on Sweater and Spice, Erin's channel before, that she'd used this yarn in a different color for, I believe it was a poppy tee by Petite Knit, but I'm not sure. And she mentioned there already the thickness variation, but also color variation, so that it might be good to do helical knitting. So thanks for that, Erin. I wouldn't have thought of it at first because it's not really a hand-dyed yarn, and with commercial yarns I don't tend to do helical knitting, but I think it was a good idea for this one. So also if you use Nora Sonata, think about that, unless you maybe want some color pooling going on. The whole garment is knit on 3.5mm needles, and then you have the finishings that are I-cord edges on the sleeves. On the bottom hem here, mine tends to roll up a bit. I think I'm quite a tight I-cord knitter, which is something I still have to improve. Maybe I should go up a few needle sizes when I knit I-cords. And then here at the top, you actually don't have an I-cord, but it's just this sort of cast on edge, but you cast on with smaller needles to make it look a little bit neater, and I really like the finished look of this actually. I'm thinking that whenever maybe I make a sort of long sleeve blouse at some point, whatever, not necessarily the cumulus blouse, but any of the sort of boat neck or round neck blouses, this sort of smaller needle size for the unfinished hem could be something that I might want to repeat, because I really like it. And it's also, yeah, you kind of ensure that it's big enough to fit your head if the size of the color is big enough. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with this. I think I made a mistake somewhere on the sleeves, but you can't see it super well, so it doesn't bother me. And yeah, I'm really glad I still made this before the summer ended. I got to wear it I think 2 or 3 times after I cast this off, because it was still very sunny here in New York. Now for the past days, I think like 5 days or so, we've had horrible weather. It was very gloomy, very rainy, very autumnal. It was actually quite nice to be cozy inside, but today is a clearer day, so I'm also happy to bring out this more spring-colored knit again. And yeah, I think this is my last proper summer knit, I would say. We're almost in October now. By the time you're seeing this episode, I think it is already October, so it's a good goodbye to summer. All right, tea break. So it's not only what I'm currently wearing, but also what I'm currently drinking. And what I'm currently drinking is this seasonal Trader Joe's tea that is the pumpkin spice rooibos, which is, they always bring it out around September, I think, and then have it until Halloween, I believe, before they switch over to Christmas stuff. And this one is really good. I love it. So would definitely recommend. All right, moving on to my next finished object. It's been a long time in the making. They've been a long time in the making, I should say, because I've shown them on several episodes before, and then I lost my sock mojo, so it took me a while to finish them. But I am talking about my Rad Radish Socks. These are a pattern by Stone Knits. So they're a pair of colourwork socks with these cute radishes. I'm just trying to figure out which one I'll show you. This one here. So you have the radishes planted into the earth, and then at the toe you also have the radishes that are deep in the earth. I hope this is sharp now. So these are, as I already said, colourwork socks. They were actually my first pair of proper colourwork. And they were overall very enjoyable. I especially liked the colourwork portion. At some point I got a little bit bored when I was in the section of the midfoot. I knit these in a really large size, so the circumference I knit in the largest size that the pattern allows, size 3. So casting on 72 stitches, I think. And the shoe size is, I think, like a size 43 European, because I'm knitting these for as a gift knit. And yeah, these, I don't have size 43 feet, so it was the first for me to have to knit such a long foot and such a wide foot, and definitely takes longer than when I make socks for myself. I'm overall fairly happy with these, how these turned out. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the yarn first. So I used Cascade Heritage Limestone for the white contrast, and then I used 3 different John Arbon Exmoor sock yarns for the brown, the red, and the green. The colors will be in the Ravelry page. I think this is Fuzzpig, the brown, but then for the other 2, I never remember what they're actually called. As I said, I'm overall mostly happy with how they turned out. I think I made a mistake in the colorwork somewhere in one of the leaf sections, but it's not super visible. And again, it's my first pair of colorwork socks. They basically taught me how to knit two-handed colorwork, so holding the contrast color in my left hand and knitting continental style, and holding the main color in my right hand and knitting English style, which is my usual style of knitting. I have to say, I think my first sock actually turned out better than the second, because in the second I have a little bit of puckering going on. I can show you here. So you see here that the red sections are a little bit, yeah, you see this kind of pucker going on here, which is not the best. I think this one is even worse, actually. I'm just showing you the worst parts. These 2 are really bad. Which is obviously not ideal. I would like them to lay down flat. I'm hoping that it will still be fine, because I knit a really large foot circumference on purpose in case I would knit the colorwork too tight. But I will still have to wait for a few weeks until I can gift these to the gift recipient, and then I'll hopefully see if these colorwork socks fit. If they don't fit, the good thing is that I have smaller feet, everyone else in my family has smaller feet and less wide, like narrow feet, so I hope I'll find someone to wear them in case they don't fit. Let's see, but I'm quite happy. The pattern is super clearly written. I love knitting from a chart. I've realized that I really like chart-based knitting. Maybe that has to do with me using a lot of figures for my work and just being a very, I wouldn't say necessarily I'm a visual learner, but I just like how neatly organized charts are. And it was just cool to see that I can make something like that, that I can attempt color work. But definitely I know now that with more than a few stitches, I have to be extra careful to not have my strands, especially the ones of the main color. I think I actually knit the English style, so the main color, much tighter than the contrast color. Well, but you live and you learn. So this is my second finished object, and I'm really, really happy to have these out of my finished objects. There were a lot of ends to weave in at the end of this, but yeah, I think it's nice to give these away, and I'm also looking forward to knit more color work, and I also just hope that my knitting sock mojo will come back at some point so I can target all of the color work and other socks that I want to knit. Alright, and that actually wraps up my finished objects, so 2 for this episode, which I'm very happy with, and I'll just move on to my works in progress now. And I have to figure out in which order I show them to you. Alright, decided for the order, works in progress. I'm gonna show you first the one that you have seen before, but the one that I think I've also made quite some progress on. And this is, let me hold it up first, the Ingrid Sweater. This is a pattern by Petite Knit, and I am knitting this together with Madison over from Madison Monty's, and we are having a little micro knit along between friends for this sweater. I'm in love with this sweater. I have to say, I don't know. I think this has very, very strong potential to be my absolute favorite knit so far, and I basically love almost all of my knits, so yeah. Oh, it's so good. I'm knitting this in Cascade 220 in the colorway Natural, which is this perfect cream. I think this will go so well with everything that I have, and it's just the right balance between soft and a little bit rustic. I'm starting to discover that I may be a Peruvian Highland wool girly. I have another project on the needles that is in Peruvian Highland wool, and I just love the feel of it. Nothing against merino, I like merino, but something about this combination of rustic but not scratchy and still quite, I don't know, pliable, soft, whatever, really calls to me. So I'm knitting this Ingrid Sweater in size 3, and it's knit on 4mm needles. Mostly I'm knitting it according to pattern. I love all the different sections that you knit. I can get a little bit bored with stockinette in the round after a while, although I also find it very meditative and like it for watching other podcasts or TV shows. But I also really like the way things are changed up every few rows in this sweater, and I think I will have to look for other similar sweaters in this style because the process to me is just so enjoyable. And also, except for maybe the beginning where you have to do quite some shaping and increases and all of these things, once you hit the part where you've done all your increases and you knit back and forth, or even then when you knit in the round, it's kind of, it has interest to it, but it's not so complicated. So if you have the pattern down, I can actually watch it while knit it while watching something else. So this whole crisscross pattern I made while my partner and I started watching the morning show on Apple TV, and it turned out fine. I don't know, I like it. And again, this also follows a lot of charts, so this is another plus for me. I'm thinking, even though it's kind of similar in some aspects, I might want to knit the Storm Sweater by Petite Knit also at some point soon, just because it has these kind of different panels as well. Yeah, I just have come to realize that I really enjoy making this style of sweater. Also, I think I'm a bit of a drop shoulder construction girly. I'm knitting this in parallel with one sweater where I have to make raglan increases, and at the beginning I was also knitting this in parallel with the Uptown Tee. And for some reason I just like the back panel, shoulder, front panel kind of thing a little bit more than the raglan to make. I don't know why. But yeah, so this is the Ingrid Sweater. You can see I'm pretty close to binding off the body actually. I've started the bottom ribbing and I have a few rows left. My original goal was to bind off the body and then film the podcast episode, but then I realized A, I don't have a lot of time to do that anymore, and B, I have a bit of slight bit of wrist pain and pain in this joint here from, I think, from knitting, and then I had to remind myself I'm not knitting for the podcast episode to show you updates, but my podcast episode is to show you updates in my knitting. So whatever stage I'm at, that's the stage I'm going to show without trying to get to a certain point before I film. Although there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that can be motivating, but I don't want to do that at the expense of my of the pain in my hand. So yeah, I only have a few rows left at the bottom, and then I will have to pause it for a little bit of time because my short circumference needles that I usually use for the neck and for the arms are currently in another project that I'm going to show you. B, this sweater has a very dedicated space in my suitcase to pad out some glass frames for pictures that I'm transporting back, so I will have to hopefully finish this before I leave. So I still have 2 days so that it can go into its section of the suitcase. I knit this according to pattern, except now for the very first time at the bottom ribbing, it's 1x1 ribbing, I am trying to make the ribbing a little bit neater by knitting the ribbing inside out. And what I mean by that is just that I knit one regular round of ribbing as suggested in the pattern, and then I turned at the end of the round as if I would do like a German short row, so that I kind of slipped the yarn and pulled it very tight so that you're basically knitting on the wrong side. And I wanted to see if this way my 1x1 ribbing turns out neater. So far it looks quite neat, actually, neater than usual, but I'm not sure if that's the yarn or my technique, because you can see in the 2x2 ribbing it also doesn't look so horrible, and usually one of the knit columns looks a little bit more sort of like stretched out than it does here at the moment. So I guess I'll have to also try this technique with a different yarn to get a full answer on that, but I hope in my next podcast episode I might be able to show this as a finished object, or at least bound off in the body, so I can talk a little bit more about this bottom ribbing inside out, if it changes anything really. Yeah, as I said, this one will go into the suitcase, and I'll probably, okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about life update in this sense as well, because it is relevant for that. I don't have a place to stay in the UK yet, as in I don't have an apartment rented or anything, because my partner can only come later because of some things that we had to wait for with his visa. So for the first few weeks I'm going to stay in temporary accommodation with family and also in Airbnbs. So I'm not going to be able to open my suitcase all the time, because I'll be traveling around and leaving my suitcase in one place. So it might be that I'm not gonna take this sweater out for a few weeks after I arrive, which is sad because I love it a lot and I really want to wear it. But anyways, I don't really know where I'll be able to block things, because it takes a lot of space. I don't have my blocking mats. I don't even have like a yoga mat or anything I could spread it on. So I will have to figure all of these things out. It might be that in the next few weeks I can like somewhat finish some things, but mostly focus on smaller projects. I'm not entirely sure how that's gonna go. So based on that, I'm also not sure when I will be able to film a podcast episode. But the way I scheduled this one is that when you watch this, I'm already in the UK to kind of buy myself some time and bridge the time to the next episode, so that not too much time passes for you. Did that make sense? I hope so. So yeah, if it would be up to me, if there would be no big move ahead, I would focus on the Ingrid sweater, but let's see if I can do that. But definitely a favorite, and I'm looking forward to wear this, and yeah, really excited about this. Work in progress number 2 is a test knit, my second ever test knit. That is not at a very far stage yet, but I am getting there, and this is also something that will get my focus mostly now in the next weeks. I will show you what I have so far. It's this. Again, I chose a dark color because I wanted to have a dark colored sweater, but it's not the easiest to show in a podcast episode. So here you can see the color a bit better. It's this really nice dark red wine grape kind of color that I'm absolutely in love with. This yarn is called Berroco. Let's appreciate the sirens one last time. All right. All right, here we go. Hopefully no more noise interruptions. So this is the Cirrus Sweater, which I am testing for Iris Hardage, who is Handmakes over on Instagram. And this is my second ever test knit. Again, I chose a dark yarn because I wanted to have this color of yarn, but it's horrible to show it in podcast episodes because it's so dark. I hope this way. Yeah, that way you can see the color a bit better. So it's this beautiful purple, red wine, red grape kind of color that I'm absolutely in love with. This is Berroco Mercado, which is an Erin weight yarn that I have knit with before in this exact color. I think in my first or second ever episode I showed a hat that I made for a friend in this yarn, and it's her favorite color that we picked out together at the yarn shop. And then I was like, oh, I like it, but I don't think it would be something that I would wear. And now I found the little bit of leftover that I had from that in my stash again. And at the same time, this test call was out, and I was like, I wonder if that, if I would meet gauge with this yarn. And then I knit a swatch, and basically now fell in love with the color. A little bit delayed, but yeah. And I just think this color would look so nice with blue jeans, with any type of like white shirt, blue shirt, like light blues. I have a dark green corduroy skirt that I love to wear in autumn that this would look great with, and also these sort of like gray, they're like, have a very tiny herringbone pattern that you don't really see from far away. But yeah, so this is the Cirrus Sweater. It is, I think, a saddle shoulder construction, but I'm not very firm on the constructions yet, especially the ones that I have never made before, and this one is new to me. It does have some raglan style increases, but not really. I think this is a saddle shoulder. Anyways, it's new to me, it's very enjoyable. It has these very gorgeous broken rib details on the shoulders and along the neck. You can see it here, and also along the armhole, that I think will look very pretty. And in the sample picture of the designer, this added some really nice visual interest to the pattern for me. I'm knitting this on 6mm needles, which is one needle size up from what she recommends, but I found that I met gauge with this needle size, and I am starting to think that I might be a tight. I knew I was a tight knitter, but somehow often the suggested needle size in a pattern matched quite fine for me, but then at the end the garment was a tiny bit off, not a lot, even though I made a gauge swatch. So I think yeah, I'm just figuring out these things at the moment, and I feel like sometimes I actually do have to go up a needle size. Probably also depends on if the pattern designer knits continental or English style, because I feel like if people knit continental style and they pick the yarn instead of throwing the yarn, the gauge is often a bit looser than what I do with like English style, looping the yarn with my finger, which I then kind of tighten. So it makes sense that my gauge is a bit tighter. I'm really enjoying this so far, and this is the Berroco Mercado, not Medina. Berroco Mercado is another Peruvian Highland wool yarn. This is the colorway Ciruela, and the Peruvian Highland wool is just so nice. It's so squishy, but has a little bit of, not resistance, but it has something in the texture that is not extremely smooth, but smooth enough to not be scratchy, and it just has very nice bounce to it. It's a bit lofty. I just really like it. So this is the knit that I'm planning on focusing on more now that I've joined it in the round. I still have a bit to go before I can split for sleeves, but because this is a larger needle project, so 6mm, it does also go by much faster than any of the tiny needle projects I have worked on during the summer. So this is also a really nice, motivating, quicker progress knit. And yeah, I still have another month to work on this before the test knit closes, and I think if this is, for example, one of the knits that will go into a more accessible location for me, so I can keep working on it over the next weeks. So Cirrus Sweater by Iris Mix, and yeah, I hope in the next episode I will be able to update you on this, because that's when it has to be done. Third work in progress. I have 4 works in progress, by the way, at the moment, which is a bit more maybe than I usually do. Technically there's also a languishing sock pair where I finished the first sock but haven't cast on the second, but I'm also don't have plans to do that at the moment because the yarn is somewhere in a box at the moment, plus I don't really feel like knitting socks, so I'll keep them for a moment when I feel like casting them on again. I am knitting on another project which is very much still a tiny needle project, and the one that I'm talking about is a little bit tangled in my bag right now. It's also a bit at an awkward stage to show it nicely, but this is the twist loop top by Other Loops that has this gorgeous cable detail in the front. Baby's first cables. I was very proud of making them. I was very confused also because I wasn't sure I was making it right, but then comparing my twist loop top with pictures online made me confident that I'm actually doing the right thing. So yeah, I only have the front panel by now, and it's not even completely done, so I still have to knit the back panel, finish the front panel, still have a few armhole increases to do. And yeah, this is a very slow progress, but I do feel here and there like reaching for it and putting in a few rows. I'm knitting this on 3mm needles, and the yarn is Knitting for Olive Merino in the colorway Burnt Orange, I think it is. So it's this brownish orange that gives me all the fall vibes. I had talked about this a few times because I thought this top, because it has quite a high neck, would be a very good piece for the transitioning weather between summer and autumn. I'm not sure I will actually be able to finish this on time to still have like the leftovers of summer, but I can picture this very nicely layered under a button down in autumn as well, or under a cardigan. So I'm very motivated to still keep on going with this. And yeah, the rib is obviously not as mindless to knit as just stockinette, but it's easy enough. Although I have to say, especially with the knitting back and forth, this is not 2x2 rib but 3x2 rib, so I sometimes mess it up on the wrong side and have to go back a few stitches, but usually I notice pretty quickly. I am doing modification with this top though. So the original pattern only calls for narrower straps, so one less rib on each side. And what I did, because I also saw this on one or two Ravelry pages before, is that I cast on more stitches. So I added a few extra purls and a few extra knit stitches to make the straps a little bit wider. And then to account for this, I'm planning to increase one set of increases less for the armholes, so that whenever I join in the round, I'm at the correct number of stitches for my size. I'm planning to also write this down properly in the Ravelry page, because I have looked at a few different Ravelry pages where people had done this, but I didn't find it super easily explained, so I'm gonna write this down again as well. Not sure yet if that will work out well, but so far I kind of like at least the knowledge that I have a little bit of more of a strap already at the top of the shoulder. This is one of those patterns where I'm not sure if the designer, I mean, I don't want to blame anyone, but I think what kind of puzzled me with this pattern is that you cast on the same number of stitches for the straps for all the sizes. So even if you go to the largest size, you have this like crazy increase for the armholes, but it starts with a very, very narrow strap, which I think can be okay maybe in some cases, but I know that for me, I have quite wide shoulders, and they tend to get a little bit wider, especially now that I'm climbing a lot and using my back muscles a lot. So usually too thin straps actually don't look super flattering on me, but wider straps are a bit nicer, so I hope that this will solve this issue, and I will keep you posted on whether that solves my little problem with the pattern. Okay, and now on to my last WIP, which is in a very similar color. This is my one easy stockinette in the round project, and that's the Oslo Hat by Petite Knit, which I am knitting in a fingering weight sock yarn held double. The pattern calls for DK gauge, so yeah, I'm holding this double. This yarn is Friendly Products in fingering weight sock in the colorway Burnt Amber. It's a pretty small indie dyer that I've only ever found in my local yarn shop, so I don't know how easy they are to get, but to me this is the perfect autumnal red, orange, rust color, and it has so much dimension. I love this tonal and the dimension it has, and it's definitely, I think, maybe let's make a comparison, because we have a commercially dyed yarn here, and we have, I'm just gonna hold up one ball because that's easier, and we have one indie dyed yarn, hand dyed yarn on the right, and they are pretty similar in color, right? But I feel like if you hold them close, you see this one catches the light a little bit differently depending on how you turn it, whereas with this one the color is a little bit flatter. It's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love this color and I love knitting for olive merino and it's gorgeous, but I just find it a nice comparison that this one seems to have a bit more dimension. Maybe it's even easier to see this in the fabric. So we have this one, and we have this one that has just a little bit more variation. Do you see what I mean? Or am I just imagining that? I don't know. I think I'm not imagining it, but yeah. So this is the Oslo hat. Back to the WIP that I was talking about. This is the Oslo hat that I've been wanting to make for a while. And this yarn I had originally used for socks for a contrast color, but then I figured actually it would make a perfect hat now for autumn. And yeah, I'm holding it double. I don't know even if there are different dye lots, but since I'm holding it double, I don't mind if there's a bit of variation in there. I actually like the idea of making a DK weight garment with fingering weight yarn held double, because then you don't have to color manage that much, because they just kind of, the variation just slightly marls into each other in an equal way. So that's quite nice. Enjoying this so far. I mean, so far I've only done the cast on and knit in the round. I have used the German twisted cast on, which is my go-to cast on at the moment for any sort of hem that needs to be somewhat stretchy. So for socks I use it, and also I figured that for the hat it would probably be a good cast on to use, because it gives a little bit more than a regular long tail cast on. And it's not much more complicated. There's a really good video of Andrea Murray that I found pretty well explained, and that taught me that. So yeah, I'm knitting this in size 4, I believe, which is the size women, what it says, which should work for my head circumference, and it calls for 150 grams of yarn. I have more than that. I have, I think, about 190 or 180 grams. And then whatever is left over of that, I'm just going to keep on using for socks. And the yarn is a superwash merino nylon blend, so 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. I'm really liking this. This will probably be my plain WIP, because it's small and I can just stop wherever without having to take a note or anything, and I can just scrunch it up easily. There are like 2-3 steps, so obviously the decrease is at the crown of the head, but also there's one step that is explained for how you fold the headband. The brim, that's what I was looking for. How you fold the brim. So there are instructions of how to fold the brim and to kind of knit it into the pattern. So for that, I believe I will either have to speed up a bit with that and do that step before I board the plane, or I will be able to knit until that point and then have to do it after, or I'll just have to look up the instructions before and then hope I'll remember it. Because I think I'm at the awkward stage where I'm almost at the point where I have to do the brim folding. But I still have 2 days, so maybe I can make it until then. I'm very optimistic right now. I don't think I can do much, because tomorrow We have to clean our apartment, and then some boxes will be picked up, so there's not tons of time, but let's see. Okay, so these are all my works in progress. I will move on to acquisitions now, and I do have a few acquisitions. Now, I think I will slow down a little bit after this. My main acquisitions were related to having access to certain yarns here that I wanted to try out, that I know are not as accessible to me anymore once I move out of the States. So that's why I wanted to buy them still. One of the acquisitions is the Berroco yarn that I showed you. So this one here was an acquisition because I don't think Berroco is super widely sold in Europe. Cascade you can find, but Berroco I don't think is that easy to find, so I really wanted to make something with this Erin weight Peruvian Highland wool. Definitely very excited to also try out all the Scandinavian yarn brands like the, I don't know, Arvetta and so on that I have never tried before. I think I will also find some really good yarns there. But yeah, so that was acquisition number 1. And acquisition number 2 is the project bag that I'm holding this project in, which is this gorgeous, gorgeous patchwork quilt bag by Knitting Nelly. Knitting Nelly is a maker who has an Instagram account. She's from upstate New York, and she sells project bags and notion bags and some little gifts online in her Etsy shop. Or on her webpage, and I've been eyeing her designs for a while. I actually tried to get her project bags, so she uploads them more or less weekly, and they're obviously a limited quantity because she hand makes them, and I've tried several times to get one, but whenever I got through like the whole payment process, the order, like the items were sold out, so I was always a little bit too slow. And I'm so happy I finally got my hands on one before I leave. This is, I think, the small shawl size, so 2 to 3 bags. Ideally, I would have liked to have a slightly bigger one, but that's the only one that was there in a pattern that I really liked. So you can see these squares. So we have this little frog here. I think somewhere there's also a cat with a witch hat. And overall, I just really love the colors. She also had one a few weeks ago with pale yellows and pinks, which was very much up my alley as well. But I also really like the foresty vibes, kind of like autumn witch vibes of this bag. And it just makes me so happy whenever I see it in a corner of my room or whatever. So I really like this. I like how thick and sturdy it is. It has a double lining, drawstring bag, so very, very much like it. Then other acquisitions that I have, some of them you've seen in my last episode, or not episode, but in my autumn knit plans video. And these, I'm not going to talk so much about what I want to make with them, because you can check out that video to see for yourself. But these are a special delivery from Chelsea, True Lane Knits, from pre-order and like Flock Fiber Festival related that I sadly couldn't go to. And these are woolberry worsted in colorway Flock, so the special colorway that they dyed for Flock Fiber Festival. It's a cream base, slightly beige leaning, with absolutely gorgeous speckles in different colors, more like dark browns, dark reds, some also more lighter blues, just absolutely gorgeous. And then the La Bien-Aimée Autumn Hydrangea, which I believe is a custom colorway for La Mercerie, like the shop on Bainbridge Island, that was also released on at Flock, which is a Merino DK yarn. Very, very excited to knit with both of these. I have 2 skeins of these so I can make a shawl. And I see that my battery is dying, so I have to hurry up a bit. All right, so next acquisition is this absolutely gorgeous fluffy yarn that I picked up yesterday at Brooklyn General, one of my local yarn shops that I wanted to pay a last visit to before I leave. It was a perfectly gloomy day, perfect for some yarn shopping. I walked there through the rain, got to see like all the Brooklyn brownstones in the gloomiest weather. It was very cozy. And I picked up this yarn to make a Soul Sister scarf by Sari Nordland with. I talked about this in my last video as well, that I wanted to make this in a dark green, and this is, I think, the perfect yarn for it. I have to play around a little bit to see how I can meet gauge, because it's a bit thinner than the suggested gauge. But this, I think, is a pretty new yarn. It's a collaboration of Walcart Yarns and Les Garçons. The colorway is Boreal. Sorry, I'm just gonna unfold the label so you can also see that. That's the label. I asked at the shop, and I think it only came out this month, because I was very surprised to not see any reviews or very, very few projects listed on it on Ravelry, and yeah, it's because it just came out. It's a sport weight yarn with 55% baby alpaca, 18% fine merino wool, 17% mulberry silk, a 10% yak. So absolutely gorgeous, luxurious blend that I am so excited to knit with. And I think this will definitely be my next cast on, because it's a tiny scarf, so that's very easy to make. And it's so fluffy and so soft. I tested it against my throat and it felt so nice, and I just want to hug this yarn. It's so nice. And all the other colors are gorgeous too. They have this really pretty lavender tea that I had my eyes on as well, but decided to go for this one in the end. But I can see myself, if I like working with this yarn for the one project, I can definitely see myself make more with this, because all their colors are just universally great. All right, I'm gonna stop gushing about this yarn, but it's pretty cool. Last acquisition that I want to talk about is a hand-dyed yarn that I picked up at another local yarn shop, that is Nitty City, which is the one that is closest to me, and they have a very nice selection of local indie dyers that, yeah, it's just very nice to have access to that without having to pre-order or bulk order the yarn and not being able to see the actual accurate colors. So I picked up this yarn. So the maker behind this is who I once met for a trunk show, and I picked up some more summery yarn that time. But she dyed this absolutely gorgeous colorway at some point. This is called Everything Everywhere All at Once, so it is based on the colors of the film. I have seen the film, I very much enjoyed it, and I just love the way she dyed this up into these beautiful skeins. These are made single, so that's single ply fingering, sock weight in 100% superwash merino with 400 yards per 100 grams. They only had these two left at the shop, which was okay, because as I said in my autumn plans, I want to make a lento at some point, and I think I fall between two sizes in the lento. One of them uses 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn, the other one 3, so I should be fine with this. I didn't have a choice anyways, this is what I have to work with. And obviously I will still have to pick up the yarn to hold with this, but I'm happy to be one step closer to a lento with a gorgeous hand-dyed yarn with all the colors. This is so up my alley. Just look at this lavender, purple, at these peachy tones down here, blending into blues, and oh, I just love it so much. So I'm very happy that I got to pick this up still. And that also wraps up my acquisitions for today. Some recommendations before my camera dies. I'm sorry, I'm speeding through this. I wanted to give you a few short recommendations, the first of which is actually another YouTube channel that I've been really enjoying over the past weeks. The channel is called Sarah's Handmakes. I found Sarah because she made a very fun video about knitwear inspired by Gilmore Girls, but also just her general podcast episodes are great. I really enjoy seeing what she makes, and I also really enjoyed a very recent video of hers, which was a knit and chat about overconsumption with knitting, which I thought was a really interesting discussion and very well expressed, very nuanced, and it gave me a lot to think about, especially because I also try somehow to balance my yarn buying and figure out a way where I can buy the things that I like, also buy things for later on that I don't always have to make them right in the moment, but balance that with overspending, overbuying, thinking about environmental impact of the yarns that we consume. And I just thought the whole video was very, very nice and very thoughtful. So if that's something that you think about or that you want to hear some input about, definitely recommend that video, and in general her channel. So yeah, and then apart from that, I wanted to give 2 book recommendations as well for books that I've recently enjoyed a lot. One of them I have here, one I read as a electronic ARC on my e-reader. The one that I read on the e-reader I'm going to talk about first. That one is called You Again by the author Kate Goldbeck. It just came out, and it's a New York City based rom-com that is kind of pitched as a modern When Harry Met Sally retelling, which obviously that caught my attention. I would say it's definitely a very modern version of it, because you have just very modern topics in it that maybe in When Harry Met Sally were not so common, but the setup is, I can see the parallel. So there are 2 people that meet over and over again by accident through friends of friends of friends, and they don't really like each other, but they keep running into each other, and then they have these, I don't know, conversations, and they just somehow hit it off even though they're so different. And I really enjoyed reading this book. It's very, kind of like very smartly written. It was just so enjoyable to read, just on a sentence level even. And a nice rom-com, I guess, for people who are usually not so much into rom-coms, because I felt that it was a little bit more contemporary fiction leaning. The siren is interfering with my wrapping up this video quickly. Yes, so I very much enjoyed this. And although the cover looks very autumnal, I would say it fits very much into any part of the colder season, because it is set during a big part of January as well. So just a nice book to snuggle up with, but a little bit more modern, and maybe in some parts a little bit less stereotypical than some rom-coms that I have read so far. Okay, we're back. Battery died. Can take a little bit more time now. Not a lot, but anyways. I was talking about love interest before my battery cut me off. So this was my favorite book of this year, or at least one of the favorite books that I read this year. And as you can see by the title, it's another rom-com. It is also set in New York, and interestingly, at least for me, it's set in a sort of upscale magazine company, and the female main character is a financial analyst. I haven't read any rom-com or book or anything whatsoever about a financial analyst, so I just found it super interesting to get some insights, like fun, quirky insights into her life. And she basically interviews for another job at her company, loses it to a guy who she thinks got it through pure like nepotism, because his dad is in the, I don't know, CEO of the company or something like that. But he's kind of annoyingly interested in her, or keeps talking to her. And so basically the setup itself, I just really liked that it was set in this magazine industry world, but then that you do have a really like numbers focused kind of STEM girly as your main character, because I always like when STEM is represented in romance novels, because it's just something that I relate to a lot. What I loved about this book is how New York was portrayed in this book. It was just so enjoyable and so fun. The whole book is a lot of fun, but also the characters have a lot of depth to them. The dialogue is just very vivid, and I love Claire's writing style. I don't know, like, this is the kind of book that I read the first few pages, and then a few days later I was downtown in the financial district, and it just felt so real to me that I was like, oh, actually I could walk into these characters at any moment here, which obviously I can't, but just she makes this whole bubble of this company and the main character and her love interest come to life in such a nice way, and I found it really engaging. again, the writing was beautiful, really kind of like smart and like snappy. I don't know, just she doesn't waste a lot of words, and every word hits just the right way, you know? So I love this a lot, and I am pretty sure that I will reread this. I'm very glad that the publisher sent me a copy, a finished copy, well, not finished, but a physical copy of this book as well, so I can put it in my shelf. And this, you can see how much I like this by the fact that I'm not unhauling this before moving, but that I actually found a space for it in my backpack to take it with me. So go read Love Interest, if that is something that sounds nice for you. I would say this one is definitely much more techy than the You Again that I just talked about, but both are pretty great and kind of different in their own ways, but overlap a bit in the New York setting. But yeah, definitely would recommend both. And then just on another note, not really a recommendation, but since I'm talking about books, I also just wanted to quickly share that I finished the draft of my book. And if you haven't heard me talk about that before, I am basically working on a rom-com that is also based in New York, but is centered around two scientists. And I had finished the draft over a year ago, started the second draft, took a break because I was writing my PhD thesis. And now, over the last month, I've been focusing more again on the draft, and I just wanted to share that I finished that draft. It was a huge accomplishment for me, especially after focusing for so long on my PhD thesis to basically get into the story, and I'm just really proud of myself for having gotten the story where it is now. I think there are still some issues with it that at this point I will need to take some time to figure out how to solve, or even to figure out if they are actual issues. But I'm really, really proud of where I've brought this story, and that, yeah, just the second draft feels so much more readable and real, at least to me. It's not something... First draft, I was really embarrassed to share. The second draft is much closer to the vision in my head as well. And I was thinking a lot about this book now in the last days as I was walking through New York, knowing that I was visiting this place for the last time, for now, at least the way I can easily visit these places now. And it's just, there's so much of New York, of my version of it in that book, that I'm really grateful for having written it, because I started it really like on the train ride from New York Liberty to Penn Station the first time I arrived to visit my partner here. I had been to New York before, but that was the first time I came here to visit him after he moved here. And I started it then, and now I finished it just a few weeks before I'm leaving, and it feels so big somehow, like so fitting. And the reiterations of it have more and more memories folded into it. And obviously, like, a lot of it is just me walking around and finding a way to describe a certain thing, and then taking like a quick note in my phone and putting that somewhere into the draft. But it just feels really special to me. Okay, I'm getting emotional now. It just feels really special to me that I have this very, very unique to me memory box that is not a memoir or a diary or anything in that way, but just reading it makes me remember all these different kind of mundane or very special things that happened to me here. And I don't know, it's just really special. And I'm really, I guess, grateful to myself for having taken all the time and energy and motivation to work on something that I'm not sure people will ever read. But it has such huge value to me in itself, like in that way already, that just feels like a huge reward. So yeah, just random reflections. I don't know if you if you can imagine that sentiment, or if you maybe have something like that as well, not only in writing but in any other creative pursuit, right? We can also have knits that we associate with certain places or certain periods in our life, and I think just this one feels a little bit more weighty in a way because I worked on it so far for 2 years. Not planning to work on it, not planning to stop working on it anytime soon. I'm just taking a short break to recover and get a fresh perspective on it. But yeah, that was just really special. So wanted to talk about it for a bit. All right, and I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm gonna raise my cup to this location and this place. So it feels very special for this podcast also because I started filming in this place and figuring out ways how to make a corner cozy in a 35 square meter apartment. I don't know what that is in square feet, but it's small. It's a studio that has not a lot of space, and just figuring out how to film podcast episodes here and starting to knit more and more and discovering knitting through the yarn shops in the city. It's just, yeah, very special. I connect knitting a lot to New York so far, but let's see where everything will take me, and I'm very happy to take you along with me. I hope that it won't take ages until I can film another episode, but it might be that it does. It also might be that I film something else, because for podcast episodes I will need to have my WIPs and my finished objects and everything like kind of sit together, like a sit down place where I can talk about this. In that respect, vlogs or knit and chats or anything like that is a little bit easier for me to film if I don't have a permanent place to stay. So I'm gonna see what I have time for, what I feel like, but you will obviously stay in the loop on this channel. So if you are subscribed, if you are not subscribed yet, consider subscribing down below so you can get all the updates. Or maybe you can also check out my Instagram. I'm pagesandpurls.jpg over there, because Pages and Pearls was taken, unfortunately. And yeah, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and definitely let me know what you're currently working on. Maybe if you've gone through big transitions in your life recently or have any of those ahead, feel free to share. It's always nice to commiserate or be nervous together and talk about these things, and definitely nicer than stewing on it on your own. And until the next time I see you, I hope you're spending a wonderful, leafy, moody, but also sometimes sunny autumn, or sunny and warming up spring, depending on where you are. And yeah, I hope to see you in another episode soon, and I hope you have a good day. Bye bye.